I swear to you, I've been driving rigs for over 20 years, crossed every damn state line this country ever drew. But that night on the frozen stretch between Montana and the coast, I saw something that doesn't belong on any map. The highway was empty, no taillights, no radio chatter, just me, my engine, and that voice on the CB calling my name. Not my handle, my real name, the one nobody out here knows. You ever feel the road staring back at you? Like the asphalt itself remembers something you've done? That's what it felt like when I stopped and realized the footprints in the snow weren't mine. Want to know what I found out there? Stay tuned. Hit that follow, tap like, and listen till the end, because once you hear what really happened on Route 90, you'll never drive alone again. Cleveland smelled like wet steel and warm bread. Down by the Cuyahoga, where the rail lines stitched the city to the water, the trucking yard woke before dawn the way an old hound wakes, by twitching, by listening, by remembering. Diesel purred, chains clinked, a forklift coughed and swore. Jack Lawson stood with one hand on the ribbed aluminum of his trailer and listened to his rig idle, low and even, like a bass note you felt more than heard. He always tuned the morning by ear, closed his eyes, tilted his head, and read the mood of the engine the way some men read the tide. "Last run, huh, Jack?" called Eddie from the service bay, gray ball cap backward, palms black with grease. "Or you laying that on us so we cry at the party later?" "Last one," Jack said, and patted the door where the paint had faded to a paler blue. Time to learn how to get home without a wheel in my hands. Eddie snorted. "You'll be crawling the walls by day 3. Jack lifted one shoulder. He had been practicing the shrug. Lately, when he let his mind drift, it wandered down unfamiliar alleys. A kitchen table with a newspaper, a clock that didn't chant miles, a porch where winter made a clean line on the railing. The pictures were as warm as a stove and as strange as a hotel mirror. Road life had been his climate for so many years that the idea of stillness felt like thin air. The interstate had a way of tying a line around your ribs and tugging again and again, like a memory that refused to fade. Dean from dispatch, a heavy man who treated clipboards like shields, shuffled out with a packet and a blue pen. "Seattle. Rush," he said, underlining the word as if Jack might miss it. "Pick up in Parma, medical equipment. Straight shot along Interstate 90 with a jog to avoid construction west of Toledo. Weather out in Montana looks cranky. You'll thread the needle or you'll knit a sweater waiting it out. Call me at Missoula." Jack skimmed the pages, finger tapping the route like a man patting a well-worn dog. Toledo, Gary, Madison, Sioux Falls, Billings, Missoula, then the passes, then the tall silver palms of cranes over Puget Sound. It was all there, a necklace he had clasped 100 times, 100 winters. Only today the beads looked different, like they had been polished while he slept. The word last sat behind his eyes. It was just a syllable, but it had edges. "Watch the Wyoming line," Dean added, voice low. "State troopers are running a speed trap on the flats. And, He hesitated, studied Jack's face. "I don't say this to everybody. Just keep it tidy out there." Jack smiled without showing teeth. "I always do." He checked the straps, counted the click of each ratchet, thumped the tires with the rubber mallet like he was asking old friends how they were holding up. In the cab, the air smelled like mint rub and long-ago cigarettes and clean diesel. His radio was a stubborn thing that refused to die. A box of cassette tapes lived under the dash. A time capsule of scratchy folk singers, highway hymns, wedding band rock recorded too hot. He plucked one labeled in his own neat hand, Long Haul, and fed it in. A guitar found a shape in the speakers, as familiar as the weight of the shifter in his palm. The yard's morning crew lined the edge of the dock, the way folks gather on a platform to wave at a passing train. Eddie rapped the bumper with his fist for luck. Rosie, from the tiny office, all hair clip and bright lipstick, made a show of dabbing her eyes. Someone called a joke. Someone else let the quiet do the talking. Jack lifted his palm to the glass and eased the truck toward the gate. He did not look back. Looking back was for people who had a place waiting with lights on. Cleveland unspooled into a gray ribbon. Lake wind tugged at the clouds. By the time Interstate 90 reached west, the skyline shrank in the mirrors to a handful of hard lines and a memory. The lane straightened, and so did Jack's spine. The road was out ahead, long and busy with February, and he was in his element. He tried to keep his thoughts small: fuel stops, construction zones, whether the right fog lamp was flickering or just catching the light. But minds are migratory. They come home to the same branch without meaning to. He found himself circling the word last and the way a scout circles a camp at dusk, cautious, listening for twigs. Past Toledo, the land settled into a flat that extended, patient and relentless. Grain silos rose like punctuation in a long sentence. In Gary, Indiana, the mills breathed white and slow. A way station lifted its striped arm and waved him through like an uncle who already knew his name. Around noon as a feeling, not a number. The sky pressed down, winter heavy, and the radio crowd bubbled with talk. Somebody was laughing about a storm out near the Black Hills. Somebody was warning of ice up a ramp near South Bend. Somebody was singing along with a chorus only half remembered. That was the special radio music of truckers, the blend of weather, advice, and jokes, delivered deadpan as a snowplow. "Jack, you on?" Eddie's voice broke through, thin with distance on the old channel. "Saw a post about Colorado troopers pulling over folks for nothing but attitude." "I'm not taking Colorado," Jack answered, a smile in the line. "But I'll keep my manners." "Do that. Rosie says bring back a magnet from Montana." "Tell Rosie I'll bring her a cloud if I can find one with a handle." They laughed, the kind of laugh that resides between people who fixed flats together at 2 a.m. and split bad coffee like communion. By the time he rolled into a truck stop south of Chicago, the kind with a giant flag that flapped like applause, Jack was ready for a bowl of chili and a room full of fluorescent honesty. The dining area was all vinyl and lemon cleaner. The waitress called him honey without looking at his face. The soup was too salty and perfect. On the corkboard, flyers fluttered. Buy chains. Need a co-driver for Alaska. Christian breakfast Thursday mornings. Mavis left her scarf. Please leave it at the counter. And one drawing in pencil. A long-nosed truck with hearts for headlights and the letters DAD blocky on the trailer. He stood in front of it longer than he meant to. The spoon on the table cooled. Back in the cab, the light had changed. Afternoon is a temperature, not a clock. It makes the dash feel smoother and the mirrors wider. He reset his mirrors anyway. He had the feeling, new and funny, that someone else was lined up to sit in that seat. That the shape worn into the foam by his body would soon belong to another man's spine. The idea pinched and comforted him at once. He was west of South Bend when he saw the kid on the shoulder. Not a kid by law, maybe, but young by everything that matters. Cheeks raw from cold, a knit cap tugged low, a backpack slung wrong on one shoulder. He held a camera in one hand and his other hand half raised. Not quite a hitchhiker flag, more like someone trying to get a waitress's attention without embarrassing her. Jack did not take riders. Liability, insurance, The simple math of tired men and strangers in small spaces. He had his rules. And yet, he found himself easing into the right lane, thumb hitting the switch for the hazard lights. The engine sighed as if it had been told a story it knew the ending to. The kid slipped on the icy gravel, caught himself, and reached for the handle with ungloved fingers. When he pulled the door open, the cold came in with him. A clean cut of air that smelled like wet cedar and metallic snow. "Afternoon," the kid said, breath smoking the cabin. "Sorry to flag you down. Name's Sam, short for Samuel. I'm a documentary guy. I got dropped at the ramp when my ride's radiator gave up. I'm headed west as far as you'll take me. I can sit quiet. I can also make coffee. I don't take up much air." Jack eyed the camera. Small, black, that modern dignity. "I'm not a movie," he said, "and I don't like surprises." Sam hugged his backpack tighter. Not defensive, just warm. "No surprises, unless you want me to film something. I'm working on a series about the people who keep the country put together. Linesmen, plow drivers, guys like you." "Guys like me?" Jack tasted the phrase. "I know a few." "I'll sign whatever paper says I won't sue you if I sneeze wrong," Sam said, earnestness turning a little clumsy. "Swear, or I can stay out here and try my luck with the wind." Jack's hand found the unlock switch with a will of its own. "Seatbelt," he said, and it was an agreement and a warning. "And no filming unless you ask first. I mean, ask with words." Sam climbed in with the caution of someone entering a church through the wrong door. He clicked the belt. He set the camera on his knees like a domestic animal that might spook. Up close, the kid's eyes were quick but not restless, his jaw showing the kind of stubborn that kept you walking in February. "Thank you," Sam said, the syllables either too practiced or too grateful to be entirely one or the other. "I'm from Portland originally. Live out of a backpack now. Figured the only way to understand roads is to sit with the people who live on them." Jack guided the rig back into the flow, the long body of the truck answering the wheel like a horse you had whispered to. "Roads don't like being understood," he said. "They like being taken seriously." Sam smiled. Careful, an invitation, not a boast. "Then maybe I'll just listen." They let the miles do the talking. The wipers marked time. The land relaxed into Indiana's wide opinion of itself. Every few minutes, Sam glanced at the camera and then at Jack, and then at the horizon, as if trying to triangulate a story without poking it. "Seattle," Jack said finally. "Medical equipment, snow all the wrong places this week." "Snow makes good pictures," Sam offered. "Snow makes liars of confident men," Jack said, but there was no scold in it. Sam glanced at the cassette player. "You still run tape?" "I run what works," Jack said. "Same with boots, same with friends." "People say that about cameras," Sam said, patting his. "But most of them mean, I can't afford the fancy one. I mean it because this one has my thumbprint worn into it." Jack let himself like the kid. It made the cab feel less like a helmet and more like a room with a window. He did not have to say so. Men like him did not announce comfort. They steered around it like black ice and let it settle behind them in the wake. The afternoon grew older. A gray wash brushed the sky. They crossed into Illinois, and the land stretched its shoulders. A trooper tucked under an overpass clocked traffic and looked bored in a way that was its own kind of warning. Jack waved at the statue of a big-shouldered steelworker somebody had planted beside a rest area. He thought of his old partner for a reason he refused to name. "Mr. Lawson?" Sam said, careful with the honorific, shy with the ask. "Mind if I get a little audio?" Not a whole setup, just your voice when you talk to the road. I don't talk to the road, Jack said too quickly. Then, because the image in his head did not agree, he softened. If I change my mind, I'll tell you. Fair, Sam said. The truck stop where they ate dinner had a neon sign in the shape of a coffee cup and a stack of flyers for a church choir that practiced in the back room on Wednesday nights. The waitress, older than the plastic plants and much more alive, called Jack by name. Thought you retired already, she said, pouring coffee before he sat. You lie to me? After this one, Jack said, I'm off your grid. I'll believe it when I don't see you, she said, and slid him a slice of pie without asking. This one's on me. For luck. When they stepped back into the cold, the wind had sharpened. Out beyond the sodium lights, the interstate ran like a river under the moon. Jack looked west, where the sky grew clean and hard. He lifted his chin the way he always did at that line. He had done it for decades, a salute no one had taught him. In the cab, Sam adjusted the vents and sank into the seat as though it had claimed him. What do you call her? He asked, nodding at the dash, at the winking LEDs, at the worn leather that held Jack's shape. She's a truck, Jack said. Every boat has a name, Sam said, playful but tentative. Every camera, every guitar on a tour bus. She's a truck, Jack repeated. And then, because the kid deserved a little mercy, he added, when she was new, someone painted Bluebird on the door. The letters wore off. The habit stayed. Bluebird, Sam said, as if it would help later when he needed to aim his memory at this hour. That's good. That's right. They merged back onto Interstate 90, the lanes opening like an invitation. Behind them, Cleveland was a suggestion. Ahead, the whole long country lay down like a sleeping animal, breathing under its pelt of winter. Jack set his headlights where they needed to be, and felt the peculiar, private comfort of a big machine that trusted you because you had earned the right to be the one who touched it. Somewhere west of the toll booths, the radio picked up a station out of a small town with a big church. A man sang with a rasp that made every word sound like a lesson he had paid for. Jack turned it down, not off. Sam's head tilted, his face lit by the dash. Do you ever... not to be dramatic, but does the road ever talk back? Roads don't talk, Jack said. Then he moved his hand on the wheel. They remember. Sam did not fire the camera up. He sat with that, respectful in a way that made Jack approve of him harder than he intended. The Ohio line slid away. Indiana gathered them in. The horizon was a straight line drawn with a ruler. The sky made a fist around the moon. Jack's hands were steady, his eyes clear, his breath easy. He had told himself this was simply another run on a map he could fold blind. But behind his ribs, something had shifted a half-inch. Something heavy and familiar finding a new rest. He decided not to name it. Not yet. They passed a closed rest area where a snowplow slept like a beast in a barn. The wind came crosswise. The truck shouldered it. Sam closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again as if caught. Jack pretended not to notice. Outside, a sign flashed a warning about weather west of the Mississippi. He did not read it aloud. Settle in, Jack said finally, and his voice warmed a degree. There's a long way between here and water you can taste like salt from your porch. We'll see if we can get you that far. Sam nodded, as solemn as you can be at his age, without it curdling. Yes, sir. Cut that out, Jack said, almost smiling. This is a truck, not a courtroom. The interstate hummed. The night found its rhythm. Jack let the miles climb his bones and make a home there, the way they always had. He did not tell the kid about the other miles, the ones that sometimes ran backward and made the old accidents new. He did not tell him that the last run had a feel to it, a skin temperature, a ghost of a taste in the mouth. He would not tell him yet. The road disliked men who emptied their pockets on the first day. "Bluebird," Sam tried out, half whisper. "You and me, lady?" The heater sighed. The tape clicked over to the other side. Somewhere in the far black fields, a single yard light burned above a barn like a star that had decided to settle down and buy a pickup. Jack looked once, then let it go. There would be other lights. There would be other nights. And ahead, if he did this right and kept his hands honest, there would be the ocean beyond the cranes and the sound of gulls that mistook 18-wheelers for ships. But first, there would be the plains and the bad ice and the places where winter narrows the road to the width of a promise. He shifted up, the long weight of the trailer answering. "All right," he said to nobody in particular. "Let's see what you've got left for me." The highway listened the way only asphalt listens, without nodding, without blinking, and without forgetting. The highway was still dark when they crossed into Wisconsin. Dawn there wasn't a sunrise so much as a slow leak of silver light along the horizon, enough to make the world visible, but not yet warm. Jack kept one hand steady on the wheel, the other wrapped around a thermos of coffee that had long ago surrendered to bitterness. Sam had slept for a few hours, curled awkwardly in the passenger seat with his hood up and his hands tucked under his jacket. Every now and then, he mumbled. A list, maybe, or a name. When he woke, he blinked like someone trying to remember which life he'd fallen asleep in. "Where are we?" he croaked. "Outside Madison," Jack said. "Another couple hours and we'll hit the Mississippi. Then the country gets wide." Sam rubbed his face. "Feels wide already." Jack half smiled. "You haven't seen wide till you hit South Dakota. You start thinking you'll run off the edge of the earth if you blink too slow." Sam fumbled with his camera, still polite enough not to turn it on without asking. "Mind if I film a little of this light?" "Go ahead, the light won't mind." He opened the side vent window, and the morning air swept in, sharp, grain-scented, filled with the faraway sound of water and geese. The camera made a faint whir as Sam framed the view. Frost lifting from fields, telephone poles slicing the sky, a convoy of trucks heading east, all of them catching that same thin gold on their windshields. "Beautiful," Sam whispered. "You do this every day and still see it?" Jack shrugged. "I see it different now. Used to be background. Lately it's the point." Sam lowered the camera. "Because you're quitting?" Jack didn't answer right away. The road curved, and he let the silence bend with it. "Maybe, or maybe because I finally learned how to look." The radio hissed a burst of static, then settled on a local station preaching about patience and plowing under the hard soil. Jack turned it off. The cab filled with the hum of tires, the steady pulse of the diesel, and the faint click of Sam adjusting focus. After a while, Sam said, "When I was a kid, my dad used to tell me the wind keeps secrets. He'd say, 'If you listen long enough, it'll tell you what the land remembers.' I didn't get it then. Now I think maybe he just liked hearing himself sound wise." "Your dad a talker?" Jack asked. "He was everything but here," Sam said softly. "A pilot. Cargo runs. Half my childhood, he was a voice on a phone line. Guess that's why I like the sound of engines." Jack glanced over. "Then you're chasing him with a camera?" Sam smiled without looking up. "Maybe I am." They drove another 100 miles before stopping at a rest area perched on a bluff over the river. The wind there was serious. It came rolling through like a warning. Sam set up his tripod and let the camera drink it all in. The river's gray muscle, the bridge strung across it like a taut ribbon, and Bluebird parked in the cold sunlight, patient as a beast of burden. Jack stood by the railing, hands buried in his jacket. "You ever film something and wish you hadn't?" he asked. Sam thought about it. "Once," he said. "A wreck outside Spokane, guy in a flipped truck. I filmed for maybe 30 seconds. Before it hit me, he was still inside. I dropped the camera and ran. Afterward, I deleted it. Didn't feel right keeping that moment." "Good," Jack said. "Some things don't belong to us, even when we see them." They crossed the bridge before noon, the Mississippi gleaming like steel wire beneath them. On the far side, the world emptied out. Towns became dots, barns became rumors, and the horizon stretched until it swallowed time. Jack felt that old, dangerous peace that came with the middle of a long run. The place where you forget why you're traveling, because the road itself becomes reason enough. By evening, they stopped again at a truck plaza in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. A line of rigs idled under buzzing lights. The diner was warm and noisy, full of voices that sounded like gravel and laughter that belonged to people who lived mostly between mile markers. Sam wandered among them with his camera, asking permission before he filmed, offering smiles that made even the most suspicious driver give a nod. Jack watched from the counter, stirring his coffee. He could tell, even from a distance, that Sam wasn't just collecting footage. He was listening, really listening, to the way people shaped their stories. Later, back in the cab, Sam replayed a few clips. Voices filled the small space. "Been running since the 80s, man. Roads changed, people changed, but the quiet at 3 in the morning, same damn quiet. You don't drive a truck, you wear it. Like armor, like skin." Jack listened, eyes on the dark highway ahead. When Sam shut the device off, he said, "You got a good ear. You'll make something honest." Sam smiled. "You think?" "I do," Jack said. "You just don't know yet what you're making." Outside, the sky went from bruised purple to black. A storm warning blinked on the digital sign above the interstate. Heavy snow, Billings Pass, used chains. Jack leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. "We'll hit that in 2 days if it holds. Might need to hole up before the mountains." Sam yawned. "You ever afraid out there? I mean, in storms, alone?" Jack's fingers tightened on the wheel. "Every driver learns fear's part of the deal. You don't erase it, you steer with it." Sam nodded, thoughtful. "That's kind of beautiful," Jack chuckled. "Fear isn't beautiful, kid. It's useful." They drove on until the first flakes began to fall. Lazy, uncertain, like scouts sent ahead. And though Jack told himself he was ready for anything, he didn't see the shape that waited for him beyond the next town, something from a past he'd buried under miles and silence, waiting for the right storm to dig it up again. By the time they hit the Wyoming line, the world had turned white. Not the soft white of postcards, but the kind that hides the edges of things. The dangerous, swallowing kind. Snow came in bands that moved like ghosts across the plains, carried by wind sharp enough to shave the thought right out of your head. Jack's wipers beat a steady rhythm, but the windshield still filled with flakes faster than he could chase them away. Every mile felt earned. Every curve, a question. Bluebird groaned under the weight of weather, steady but cautious, her tires biting down on ice-polished asphalt that had forgotten its color. Sam leaned forward, camera forgotten on his lap, eyes wide. "How can you see anything out there?" "I don't," Jack said. "I feel it." Years of roads teach you the language under your tires. Feels like we're driving through the inside of a snow globe. Jack gave a dry laugh. Let's just hope nobody shakes it too hard. The radio spat fragments of warnings from the National Weather Service. Whiteout conditions near Casper, wind speeds over 60 miles per hour, visibility near zero. The words blurred together, but Jack already knew the script. He'd danced with storms before. You didn't fight them, you found the rhythm, moved with it, and hoped the music didn't change. Want me to look for a place to stop? Sam asked. Jack shook his head. If we stop on the shoulder, we freeze or get hit by someone too dumb to do different. Closest rest area's 30 miles. We'll ride it. Sam nodded, trusting him more than he should have. He watched Jack's hands. Steady, deliberate, small corrections with each gust, as if coaxing a nervous horse. There was something mesmerizing in that calm. Outside, the storm howled. It erased fences, barns, the sky. The truck became a moving island of noise and warmth in a world that had turned to silence. Jack's eyes narrowed as the headlights caught something. A flicker of movement, too close to the road. A figure? No. A shadow, stumbling, vanishing again. He blinked, leaned forward. You see that? Sam squinted. Wait, yeah, there, by the mile marker. Jack eased off the throttle, brought the truck down to a crawl. Hell of a place to be walking. The figure appeared again, stumbling into the wash of the high beams, a woman wrapped in a red parka crusted with snow. She waved both arms weakly, almost falling as she did. Jesus, Sam whispered, we have to stop. Jack was already braking, pulling as far off as he dared. The tires skated but held. He threw the parking brake, grabbed his gloves, and opened the door. The wind punched him full in the chest. Stay here, he yelled over the storm. If I'm not back in 2 minutes, call 911. He trudged toward her, boots sinking into snow that swallowed his ankles. The cold hit like a hammer, wet, immediate, unkind. The woman stumbled again, and he caught her under the arm just as her knees folded. Ma'am, you all right? She blinked up at him, face pale, lips blue. Car. In the ditch, she gasped. My husband, he's still... Jack didn't wait for the rest. He half carried her back to the truck, Sam jumping out to open the passenger door. The heat hit them like mercy. Blanket! Back seat! Jack barked. Sam moved fast, wrapping her tight. Jack turned back toward the storm, but she grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength. Please, he's still out there. Jack hesitated for half a heartbeat, then nodded. Where? She pointed, hand trembling. Maybe half a mile, off the right side. Blue pickup. Stay with her, Jack said to Sam. Keep the heater on full. He vanished into the snow before Sam could argue. The cold didn't feel like weather anymore. It felt alive. The kind that searched for seams in your jacket, found your breath, and tried to take it. Jack followed the faint shape of tire ruts until they broke into a shallow ditch. And there, half buried in drifted snow, lay the pickup. Headlights dim, engine dead, door wide open like a frozen scream. He slid down, calling out. Sir? You hear me? No answer, just wind. Then, a cough. Weak, but there. Jack rounded the truck and found the man slumped behind the wheel, head tilted against the glass. Blood had frozen in a line down from his temple. Hang on, Jack said, pulling the door wider. The hinges protested. We'll get you warm. He lifted the man's arm around his shoulders, dragging him out of the cab inch by inch. The man groaned, but didn't wake. Jack pulled him uphill, muscles screaming against the wind. By the time he reached the road again, his face was burning and numb all at once. Bluebird's hazard lights pulsed through the storm like a heartbeat. Sam stood outside the cab, jacket flapping, shouting something Jack couldn't hear. Together, they hauled the man inside. The heater fought back the cold. The woman leaned over, tears streaking down her cheeks, thawing as they fell. "Tom," she whispered. "Tom, stay with me." Jack caught Sam's eye. "Call it in." Sam grabbed his phone, fingers trembling, trying to find a signal. Finally, one bar. "Got it. Emergency line's on." Jack nodded. "Tell them we're on Highway 18, mile marker 72, one vehicle in ditch, 2 victims, 1 unconscious. We'll keep them warm." Sam relayed it, voice steady despite the shake in his hands. When he hung up, he let out a breath like he'd been holding it for an hour. "They're sending rescue from Lusk," he said. "Said maybe 30 minutes. Jack checked the man's pulse, faint but there. "He'll make it if they're fast." The woman clutched her husband's hand, whispering words too quiet to catch. Sam sat back, staring at Jack. "You didn't even think twice," he said. "You just went." Jack didn't look at him. "Thinking gets in the way when people are freezing. You've done that before, haven't you?" Jack's eyes flicked to the windshield, where the snow still clawed at the glass. "Once," he said finally. "Long time ago. Didn't go this well." Sam wanted to ask more, but the tone in Jack's voice made him stop. The cab fell quiet except for the heater's steady hum and the whisper of wind outside. Half an hour later, red and blue lights shimmered through the storm. The rescue crew loaded the couple onto stretchers, thanking Jack and Sam with gloved nods. When the last ambulance door shut, the silence that followed felt bigger than the sky. Jack climbed back into the cab, started the engine, and sat for a moment, staring at the empty road. Sam broke it gently. "You okay?" Jack's jaw tightened. "You keep rolling long enough, you find yourself at the same mile marker twice. Different storm, same cold." He eased the truck back into gear, tires crunching over new snow. The road ahead looked endless, but Jack didn't mind. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone in the cab. Sam watched him quietly, the red light of the dashboard catching the reflection of something new in Jack's face. Not just weariness, but the first flicker of something deeper. Something that looked an awful lot like memory. The snow eased by morning, leaving the world bruised and quiet. A thin sun blinked through the cloud cover, pale and tired, as if it had fought the same battle and barely won. Bluebird purred through the Wyoming plain, her wheels cutting clean tracks into the crusted white. Jack hadn't slept. He'd pulled off into a rest stop after the rescue crews left. But instead of shutting his eyes, he'd sat there for hours with the engine running, watching the heat rise in faint ghosts from the hood. Now, as they rolled west again, Sam could feel the difference in him. Jack's movements were slower, deliberate, like each thought weighed something. "You didn't sleep, did you?" Sam asked. Jack grunted. "Sleep's for men who aren't haunted." Sam gave a small, careful smile. "You want to talk about it?" Jack's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. For a long time, he didn't answer. The road hummed beneath them, the land stretched bare and unbroken. Finally, he said, "You ever lose someone and keep driving anyway?" Sam blinked. "No, I've lost people, sure. But I stop. You have to stop." "Not always," Jack said quietly. "Sometimes the road won't let you." They pulled into a truck stop outside Casper, a lonely spread of asphalt surrounded by drifts taller than a man. Inside, the diner smelled like burnt bacon and old coffee. The waitress, a woman with streaks of silver in her hair and eyes that had seen too many winters, poured them both mugs without asking. Jack stirred his coffee, eyes fixed on nothing. "It was 15 years ago," he said finally. "Same stretch of highway, give or take a few miles, blizzard like this one. I was hauling tanker freight, hazmat, diesel mostly. Company was pushing for an early delivery, said the snow wasn't supposed to hit till dawn." Sam leaned forward, the steam from his mug fogging his glasses. 2 hours out," Jack continued. "I came up on a sedan spun sideways across the lane. No lights, no warning. I hit the brakes, but it was ice underneath. Tankers started to jackknife. There was no time to think, no shoulder to run for." He took a slow breath. "I missed the car, but the trailer didn't. It clipped the rear quarter. Tank ruptured. Fire took everything after that." Sam swallowed. "The people in the car." "A woman and her little girl," Jack said. His voice didn't waver, but the quiet that followed was heavier than grief. It was penance. "By the time I pulled them clear, it was too late. The fire was faster than my hands." Sam sat back, stunned into silence. Outside, a gust of wind slapped against the window, scattering snow like ash. "Police cleared me," Jack went on. "Said it was an accident. Weather, bad luck, nothing I could have done. Company paid out, insurance, all of it. But that doesn't clear you in here." He tapped his chest, slow and deliberate. "That storm never stopped, Sam. It's just been waiting for me to drive back into it." Sam looked down at his hands. "You think last night was what? Some kind of chance to make it right?" Jack gave a bitter smile. "No such thing as making it right. But maybe you get to make it mean something." They sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the soft clatter of dishes and the low hum of the heater. Finally, Sam said, "You ever talk to anyone about it?" Jack laughed once, a dry, empty sound. "You're the first person I've said the names to since the funeral." "Names?" Jack hesitated. "Maggie and Claire." He said them slowly, as if each syllable were made of glass. "The mother and daughter. I went to their graves once. Didn't stay long, didn't deserve to." Sam's throat felt tight. "Maybe you do now." Jack looked up at him. "What makes you think that?" "You stopped last night," Sam said simply. "You went back into the storm when most men would have driven on. That's not the same man who walked away 15 years ago." Jack didn't answer. He just stared into his coffee until the reflection of the light above them trembled and vanished. But they rolled out again before noon. The road west of Casper climbed, winding through low hills flecked with snow-dusted pines. The storm had passed, but the sky still looked uneasy, as though the weather hadn't decided whether to forgive the world or try again. Sam filmed from the passenger seat, just glimpses this time. The way Jack's hands moved on the wheel, the way the highway coiled ahead of them like a silver scar. "You ever wonder?" Sam asked quietly. "What happened to the families after?" Jack nodded once. "All the time. I sent a letter. Never mailed it." "Why not?" "What could I write that'd matter?" Jack said. "I'm sorry is small against what you take from someone." Sam was silent for a while. Then he said, "Maybe you write it anyway. Not for them. For you." Jack glanced over. "You always talk this much?" "Only when the silence is too heavy for one man to carry." Jack gave a slow grin despite himself. You're not wrong, kid. You just don't know when to stop being right. Sam chuckled, but the sound faded as he looked out the window. You think the road forgives us? Jack considered that. Road doesn't forgive or punish. It just remembers. What we do is what we have to live with. The snow-capped ridges rose ahead, tall and sharp, waiting. The mountains. The kind of country that tested every driver's faith. In their rig, in their reflexes, in themselves. And somewhere beyond those ridges, Sam's story and Jack's reckoning were both waiting to be told. That night, when they pulled into a quiet rest area at the base of the Rockies, Jack sat outside on the steps of the cab, smoking a cigarette he hadn't touched in years. The air was thin, the stars brutally clear. Sam joined him, camera in hand, but off. You mind if I record tomorrow? Tomorrow's fine, Jack said. Tonight's just for remembering. They sat in silence under a sky wide enough to hold their ghosts. Far off, the wind stirred through the pines, whispering names neither of them said aloud. The first switchback of the Rockies hit like a test of faith. Snow had melted into a slick sheen of water that glistened under the thin noon sun. Each curve looked like a dare, each drop-off a whisper of gravity. Jack guided Bluebird up the grade, one gear at a time, the engine's deep growl steady as a heartbeat. Sam sat with both hands gripping the dash. You do this every trip? Every winter since before you were shaving, Jack said, lips tight around a smile. You learn what she can take, and what you can't. They climbed higher. Pines leaned in on both sides, their branches heavy with snow, their shadows long. The radio was dead this far into the mountains. No music, no chatter. Just the hum of the road and the soft wheeze of the heater. Feels like the world's holding its breath, Sam said. It is, Jack replied. Up here, everything's waiting for something to fall. A hawk glided low over the guardrail, its wings cutting through the light. Sam reached for his camera, but Jack raised a hand. Don't. You'll miss it trying to catch it. Sam let the lens fall. The hawk dipped once, then vanished behind a ridge. For a while, neither of them spoke. But they stopped at a pullout halfway to the summit. Below them, the valley stretched wide and glittering, a frozen ocean of trees and ice. Sam climbed out, breath turning white. This is incredible, he said, spinning slowly, filming the horizon. You ever get tired of seeing all this? Jack leaned against the fender, arms crossed. You can get tired of anything if you forget to be grateful for it. Sam turned the camera toward him. That sounds like something you've practiced saying. Jack smirked. Maybe I had to. He looked out at the road curling higher into the mountains. Up there, where the air gets thin, that's where I flipped my first truck, 20 years ago. Woke up upside down hanging from a seatbelt. Thought that was it. What happened? Snowplow found me. Said I was lucky. But luck's a word we use when we don't want to say grace. Sam lowered the camera. You talk like a preacher sometimes. Jack laughed softly. I talk like a man who's had to bargain with too many ghosts. And they rolled again, higher, slower. The grade steepened, the wind rising. Clouds dragged themselves across the peaks ahead, bruised purple and gray. Halfway through the pass, Jack's CB radio hissed back to life. Breaker, breaker, westbound. Anyone hearing me on 90? Jack reached for the mic. Go ahead, westbound. Snow squall heading your way, buddy. Whiteout conditions on the crest, visibility 0. They're closing the upper lane in 20 minutes. You got chains? Always, Jack said. Then you might make it. Good luck. The line went dead. Sam looked at him. What's a squall? Jack didn't answer right away. He was already calculating distance, elevation, daylight. Short storm. Hard punch. Can come and go in 10 minutes or kill you in 5. We'll pull over before the crest, get the chains on. Sam nodded, though he looked pale. By the time they reached the chain-up area, the sky had turned the color of unspoken trouble. Jack pulled the rig to the side, killed the engine, and stepped out into a wind that sliced straight through his coat. Stay in the cab, he told Sam. You'll just freeze your fingers off. Sam ignored him, grabbing gloves and hopping out anyway. You think I'm going to let you do this alone? Teach me. Jack gave him a look, half irritation, half reluctant respect. All right, don't touch the iron without gloves. It'll bite you. Together, they worked the heavy links onto the tires, metal clinking like cold bells. Jack showed him how to feed the chain through, how to tighten the tensioners until they sang. Snow began to fall, light at first, then thicker, faster. When they finished, both men were breathless, faces red, hands shaking. Good job, Jack said, clapping him on the shoulder. You're officially part of the chain gang. Sam laughed through his teeth. This is insane. Jack smiled. That's trucking. Then they started up again, the chains clattering against the ice. The world outside vanished into white. Visibility dropped to a few truck lengths. Jack leaned forward, eyes narrowed, his body tense but calm. Every muscle knew what to do. Sam stared out the windshield. How can you tell where the road is? Jack pointed. See that post? That's the marker. Stay between the ghosts. They crawled higher, into the storm's teeth. Wind screamed against the cab, shoving the truck sideways. Jack fought it, steady as stone. Then, through the blur of snow, a shape loomed ahead. Jack slammed the brakes, trailer fishtailing. Jesus! Sam shouted. What is it? A car. Stopped sideways across both lanes, hazard lights blinking dimly through the storm. Jack's pulse surged. Hold on. He downshifted hard, wheels locking, the trailer sliding, iron chains sparking against the ice. Bluebird groaned, but held. The car was only a dozen feet away when they stopped. Close enough for Jack to see the terrified face of a man inside. He exhaled slow. You okay? Sam nodded, wide-eyed. That was holy hell. Jack grabbed his coat. Stay here. He trudged through the snow, banging on the car window. The driver rolled it down an inch, pale and shaking. I can't move it. Lost traction. Put it in neutral, Jack yelled. I'll give you a push with the rig. Stay in the car. He climbed back into Bluebird, dropped into low gear, and eased forward until the bumper kissed the car's rear gently. Hang tight, he muttered. With a roar, Bluebird pushed. The small sedan lurched, tires spinning, then caught grip and rolled forward, out of the lane. Jack pulled back, parked again. The man inside waved frantically, mouthing thanks. Jack nodded once, too tired to speak. Sam was grinning. You just moved a car uphill in a blizzard. Jack leaned back. Bluebird did. He took a long breath, letting the adrenaline bleed out of his system. Storm's lightning. Let's ride before it remembers us. They crested the pass at dusk. The clouds tore open, and sunlight spilled across the world like forgiveness. Below them stretched a valley of gold and white, miles of frozen rivers, pine forests, and the faint thread of a road winding west. Sam sat in stunned silence. That's The most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Jack smiled faintly. That's the reward. The road beats the hell out of you, then hands you this and says, "Still mad at me?" Sam laughed softly, lowering the camera. "Guess I can't be." They rolled down the other side, slow. Careful. The storm was behind them, the air clear, and the long miles toward Montana stretched ahead like a promise. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, not just the weather, not just the road. Something inside him had shifted. The ghosts were still there, but quieter now. For the first time in 15 years, he didn't feel like he was running from that night. He felt like he was driving through it and out the other side. They rolled into Montana under a sky the color of worn denim. The storm had burned itself out, leaving behind a world rinsed clean, sharp air, blue horizons, snow stacked high on the shoulders of the road, like folded blankets. The sign read, "Welcome to Red Haven. Population 2,612. It wasn't on their route, but Jack turned off the highway anyway. Sam glanced up from his notebook. "We stopping for fuel?" Jack didn't answer right away. Maybe for something else. Red Haven wasn't much. A single main street with an old brick diner, a gas station, and a row of faded houses that leaned together like tired relatives. The kind of place that had once thrived on mining or logging, and then quietly learned how to disappear. They parked outside a diner called the Timberline, its windows fogged with heat. A neon sign flickered open like it was making up its mind. Inside, the place smelled like coffee, bacon, and something sweet burning on a griddle. A bell over the door gave a tired jingle as they walked in. A woman behind the counter looked up, a few gray strands in her dark hair, eyes that could have been 20 or 50 depending on the light. Her name tag read, M. Doyle. "Morning," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. "Coffee?" Jack nodded, sliding into a booth. Sam followed, camera in his lap, still unsure if he should film. As the woman poured, she gave Jack a long look. "You just coming through?" "Heading west," Jack said. "Seattle delivery." She smiled faintly. "We don't get many trucks stopping here anymore." "Highway's faster if you keep north." Jack looked around. There was something about the place. Something familiar when the way the counter curved, the sound of the clock over the kitchen door. "I know," he said quietly. "I used to." The woman paused mid-pour. "Used to?" Jack met her eyes. "You ever hear of a driver named Lawson? Jack Lawson?" The cup froze in her hand. Then she set it down slow, her face unreadable. "Yeah," she said finally. "I heard that name." Sam looked from one to the other. "You two know each other?" Jack didn't answer. He was staring at the woman like a man who's just realized he's walked into his own dream. She took a deep breath. "You probably don't remember me. Maggie Doyle was my sister." The words landed like a tire blowout. Jack's throat went dry. "Your sister, Maggie?" The woman nodded. "And Claire was my niece." Her voice didn't waver, but her eyes did. "I didn't expect to ever see you. Not here." Sam sat back, stunned. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. "I didn't come looking for forgiveness," Jack said quietly. "I didn't even know this was where." "You didn't know," she cut in. "That's the story, isn't it? The company said the storm came out of nowhere, that it wasn't your fault." Jack swallowed. It wasn't the company's story that mattered. The woman studied him for a long time. Then finally, she sighed. "She used to wait for you, you know. Maggie, after the crash, before the hospital took her off the machines. She kept asking if the driver was okay." Jack blinked. She asked that?" "Yeah," the woman said softly. "She said, He sounded scared. I hope he's all right. Even then, she was worried about somebody else. Jack's hands trembled against the mug. He set it down before he spilled it. I tried to write you, he said. A letter. Never sent it. She nodded. I know. It showed up anyway. He frowned. What? She smiled sadly. One of your co-drivers found it after you left the company. He sent it to me years later. Said you never stopped talking about that night. Jack closed his eyes. I didn't deserve for you to read it. I didn't read it, she said. Not until last year. Thought it would make me angrier, but it didn't. What did it make you? Tired, she said, of carrying something that belonged to both of us. For a moment, no one spoke. The diner seemed to breathe around them, the slow hiss of the coffee pot, the clatter of a spoon. Finally, Sam broke the silence. Miss Doyle, I'm filming a documentary about long-haul drivers, about what they carry, not just the freight. Would you want to talk about your sister? About that night? She looked at him, then at Jack. Would you be in it too? Jack hesitated. If she wants me to. She thought for a moment, then nodded. All right, but only if we do it here, and only once. What they filmed for hours. No lights, no scripts, just the three of them and the low hum of the diner. She talked about Maggie, how she loved painting, how Claire used to sing in the car, how they were driving home from visiting family when the storm hit. Jack didn't interrupt. He just listened. Every word felt like penance and grace braided together. When she finished, Sam turned the camera toward Jack. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, he said. Jack took a long breath. I spent 15 years running from this road, he said. But every mile just took me closer to it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want their names to stay spoken. The woman reached across the table and put her hand over his. Then say them, she whispered. Maggie and Claire, Jack said, voice cracking on the second name. I remember them every mile. She nodded once, tears glinting but unshed. Then you're already forgiven. Just don't waste it. When they left the diner, the sun was slipping low behind the mountains, painting the snow orange and gold. Sam was quiet for a long time. You okay? He finally asked. Jack nodded slowly. No, he said. But maybe I'm closer. They climbed back into Bluebird, the road waiting, the world suddenly lighter. As they rolled out of Red Haven, the town faded in the mirrors. One main street, one diner, and the woman who'd waited 15 years for a man who never thought he'd come back. Sam clicked his camera off and stared ahead. You know, that's not the story I thought I was going to tell. Jack smiled faintly. The best ones never are. The road turned west again, toward the last stretch of mountains and the promise of the Pacific. But something about the light on the horizon told Jack the journey wasn't done, just changed. And for the first time, that didn't scare him. The road that wound down from the Rockies into Washington felt different. Gentler somehow, as if the country itself had decided Jack had earned an easier ride. Pines gave way to low, wet valleys. The air grew heavy with salt and rain. After weeks of snow and wind, the smell of the ocean felt like waking from a long fever. Bluebird rumbled west through the last stretch of gray daylight. Sam had the camera balanced on the dashboard, recording the blur of forest and sky. His voice was quiet when he spoke. You ever think about stopping for good here? Jack's eyes stayed on the road. Seattle's as far as the line goes. Beyond that's water, and I can't drive water. Sam chuckled. You could buy a boat. Don't tempt me. I just sink it on purpose to keep it honest." The kid laughed, but his tone softened. "You joke a lot more now." Jack gave a half smile. "You film a man for a week and think you know him." "I think I know when a storm lifts," Sam said. Jack didn't answer, but the silence between them was easier than before, like two songs that happened to share the same rhythm. They reached the edge of Seattle by evening, city lights shimmering through a curtain of drizzle. Jack found a truck stop near the docks, a broad yard ringed with sodium lamps, half full of idling semis and the smell of diesel and rain. He cut the engine, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel relief. He felt something like uncertainty. "This the end of the line?" Sam said softly. Jack nodded. "Delivery in the morning, then I guess it's official." Sam looked at him. "And after that?" "After that," Jack said, "I find out who I am without a steering wheel." Sam grinned. "You could help me finish the film, be the co-director." Jack snorted. "Kid, I barely know how to work a microwave." "That's why it'll work. I'll handle the camera, you handle the truth." Jack gave him a long, amused look. "You really think people want to hear from an old trucker with a past that won't sit still?" Sam shrugged. "I think people want to hear something real. And you're the realest thing I've found on this road." Morning came with mist and gulls crying over the port. The delivery went smooth, a warehouse near the water, forklifts darting between stacks of crates. When the foreman signed the manifest, Jack stood for a moment by Bluebird's hood, palm resting on the metal. "That's it," he whispered. "End of the run." Sam was filming from a few steps away, quiet, respectful. "You gonna miss her?" Jack smiled sadly. "She's the only thing that ever listened without judging." They spent the afternoon at the waterfront, where the rain had turned the boardwalk into a mirror. Sam edited footage on his laptop inside the cab, while Jack watched ferries come and go, each one vanishing into fog like a promise. "Got something I want you to hear," Sam said finally, handing over a pair of headphones. Jack put them on. What came through wasn't music, it was voices. The ones Sam had recorded along the way. Drivers, waitresses, radio chatter, the sound of chains in the snow, the hum of the engine. Then, softly, Jack's own voice from that night in the diner. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want their names to stay spoken." After a moment, another voice, Maggie's sister, followed. "Then say them." And then Jack's voice again, raw and unguarded. "Maggie and Claire." When the clip ended, there was only the sound of the sea and the distant cry of a horn. Jack sat still for a long moment. "You put that in?" Sam nodded. "It's the heart of it. The story's not about miles. It's about carrying what the road gives you and what it takes." Jack handed the headphones back. "You're good, kid." "I learned from the best," Sam said. A week later, the documentary, titled The Road Remembers, hit the web. Sam had uploaded it to a small streaming site, expecting maybe a handful of views from friends. Instead, within a few days, it caught fire. Truckers shared it first, then families of drivers, then ordinary people who didn't know a clutch from a carburetor but knew what loss sounded like. Comments filled the page. "This made me call my dad." "For Maggie and Claire, for everyone who keeps moving." "Cried at a stoplight listening to the part where he says their names." Jack read them one evening in a small rented room above a garage near the docks. The window was open. The smell of salt drifted in. For the first time in years, the silence didn't ache. It simply was. When Sam came by with 2 beers and the look of a man who hadn't slept, Jack grinned. You made people feel something. That's rare. We made them, Sam corrected. And the film's not done. There's one more scene I want. Jack raised an eyebrow. Yeah? You, Sam said, deciding what comes next. But the next morning, they drove up the coast highway, Bluebird's engine humming like an old tune played for the last time. The Pacific stretched endless and gray to their left. Cliffs rose sharp to the right. At a pullout overlooking the sea, Sam set up the tripod. Just talk, he said. Whatever's true. Jack stood with the wind in his hair, the ocean roaring below. He looked into the lens and said, for most of my life, the road was home because it didn't ask questions. But home's supposed to be a place you can stop. I never knew how. Maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Learning how to stop without feeling like you're dying. He turned his head toward the horizon. This isn't goodbye to the road. It's just me learning how to walk again. Sam lowered the camera slowly, eyes shining. That's the ending, he whispered. Jack nodded. Feels like the beginning. They stayed there till sunset. The light poured gold over the cliffs, and the ocean burned like metal. Jack thought about Maggie and Claire, about the miles behind him, about the quiet ahead. When the last sliver of sun dipped below the water, he said, You know what I'm going to do first? What? Buy a house, Jack said. With a porch. Maybe near this coast. I'll park Bluebird out front till her wheels rust. Sam grinned. You'll last a week before you're itching to drive again. Maybe, Jack said. But this time, I'll know what I'm driving toward. They sat there until the stars came out, 2 silhouettes against the edge of the continent, the old road winding invisible behind them. For the first time since that long-ago storm, Jack Lawson felt still, not trapped, not haunted, just still. And the sound of the waves was enough. Fame, Jack discovered, didn't feel like fame. It felt like the road again, loud, endless, full of strangers waving from a distance. Within weeks of the road remembers going viral, his phone was full of missed calls and messages. News outlets wanted interviews. Trucking companies wanted to feature him in safety campaigns. Some viewers sent gifts. Coffee mugs, hand-knitted scarves, even a model's semi-painted blue with Bluebird scrawled on its side. But among the messages, one email stopped him cold. The subject line read, Claire's father. Jack sat in silence, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. He read the first line twice before he trusted himself to breathe. Jack Lawson, my name is Richard Doyle. Maggie was my wife. Claire was my daughter. I watched your film. Took me 3 tries to finish it. I wasn't sure I wanted to. But I did. You said their names. That mattered. Jack's hands trembled. The message went on. For years I hated you. I wanted to. I thought that hate would keep them close. But it just made me smaller. Watching you speak, hearing the way you still carry them, I realized we've both been stuck in the same place all this time. Maybe it's time to move. If you ever find yourself near Helena, there's a small cafe on 9th called The Lantern. I'm there most mornings. Coffee's terrible, but the light's good. You'd be welcome. Richard Jack read it again and again. Every word was heavy but not sharp. It didn't cut. It carried. Sam found him still staring at the screen an hour later. You okay? Jack nodded, but his voice cracked. He reached out. Who? Maggie's husband. Sam's eyes widened. Oh my God. What did he say? Jack handed him the laptop. Sam read quietly, then looked up. You're gonna go, right? Jack looked out the window at the gray Seattle drizzle. I don't know. Maybe he just needed to say it. Maybe he needs to hear it, Sam said softly. On 2 days later, they were rolling east again. Jack hadn't planned on driving more, but Bluebird seemed to hum differently now, lighter, eager. The miles didn't feel like punishment anymore. The cafe sat on the corner of 9th and Main, a squat building with fogged windows and a neon sign that buzzed like an old fly. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon and bad coffee. A man sat by the window reading a paper, his shoulders broad but slumped. Jack stood in the doorway for a long moment before he found his voice. Richard? The man looked up. His hair had gone almost white. His eyes the same soft brown as the woman from Red Haven's diner. For a heartbeat, both men froze, two ghosts realizing they still had bodies. Then Richard nodded. Jack Lawson. Yeah. Sit down. Jack did. The chair creaked. Neither spoke for a minute. The waitress poured coffee, oblivious to the years stacked on that table. Finally, Richard said, You look like a man who hasn't stopped driving since he started. Jack gave a faint smile. That's about right. I used to hate the sound of trucks, Richard said. Couldn't stand it. Thought everyone was yours. I don't blame you. Richard looked down at his cup. You know, the police said it wasn't your fault. I didn't believe them. I needed someone to hold responsible. It's easier than holding grief. Jack swallowed hard. You deserved someone to blame. I just wish it hadn't been me. The man looked up then, eyes raw but clear. I don't hate you anymore. Jack blinked. You don't have to forgive me. I'm not forgiving you, Richard said. I'm forgiving myself? Because holding on to hate kept me frozen with them. You know that feeling. Jack nodded slowly. Every mile. They sat in silence. Outside, snow began to fall. Soft, slow, almost kind. Richard reached into his coat and then pulled out a small envelope, yellowed at the corners. This came with Maggie's things. Said for the driver. She must have written it before she left home that day. We never opened it. He slid it across the table. Jack stared at it, fingers trembling. His name was written on the front in a looping, confident hand. You sure? He asked. Richard nodded. She meant it for you. Jack opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. Mr. Lawson, I know you don't know me. You're just a name on a schedule, a voice on a radio. But I wanted to say, thank you for doing what you do. I know the road's lonely. My husband drives too sometimes. And I see how the world forgets the people who keep it moving. So if you're reading this, please know someone out there wishes you a safe drive home. Maggie Doyle. The words blurred as Jack read them. He set the letter down, covering it with one hand. She wrote this before she ever met me, he said quietly. Guess she did, Richard said. That's who she was. Jack nodded, throat tight. I'll keep it safe. I think she already did, Richard said. When they left the cafe, Sam filmed from the curb as Jack stepped out into the snow. He didn't speak this time, didn't need to. The camera caught him standing there, face turned toward the falling flakes, eyes closed, lips moving as if he were saying the same words over and over. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Later, Sam would end the sequel documentary with that shot. No narration, no music, just the sound of winter and forgiveness breathing in the same frame. That night, Jack parked Bluebird at a rest stop overlooking the dark stretch of the Missouri River. The water was black glass under the moon. Sam handed him a beer. You gonna keep driving? Jack smiled. Maybe for a while, but not to run. Just to see. Sam nodded. Then maybe that's the real end. Jack looked at him. There's no end on the road, kid. Just turns you didn't plan for. They clinked bottles and sat in silence, watching the world drift by below. The river whispered under the ice, steady as breath. And somewhere in the sound, Jack thought he heard the road saying home. Spring came late to Montana. It crept over the plains like someone too polite to knock. First a slant of warmer sunlight, then the cautious trickle of meltwater along the ditches, then the sharp smell of wet soil waking up. Jack had spent the winter hauling local freight for a small outfit out of Helena. Short runs, no overnights, enough to keep his hands busy without losing himself to the miles again. Bluebird was parked outside the depot, washed and shining, her paint dulled by age but proud as ever. Jack leaned against the bumper, smoking, watching the river gleam in the distance. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something in the area code, Los Angeles, made him pause. Lawson, he said. A woman's voice, bright and practiced. Mr. Lawson, hi. This is Allison Tate from Horizon Pictures. We're producing a limited series inspired by The Road Remembers. Sam Price gave us your number. He said you might be interested in consulting. Jack frowned. Consulting? We want to tell your story, Allison said. Your words, your experiences, honestly. But we'd like your involvement. You'd be credited as a producer. It would pay well. Jack stared out over the water. The idea felt strange, like someone offering to buy his own reflection. Let me think about it, he said finally. Of course, she replied quickly. We'd be honored to have you. Just call when you're ready. When he hung up, the quiet settled again. Now that night, Sam called on video. His face filled the screen, older somehow, maybe just the sleepless eyes of a man learning how fast success moves. You got the call too? Sam asked. Jack nodded. You tell them they could make a movie? I told them I'd only do it if you were on board. Jack smiled faintly. That's loyalty. It's honesty, Sam said. You're the heart of the story. Jack rubbed his jaw. I'm not sure I want to see my ghosts on TV, kid. Maybe they'll finally stay put once you do. Jack didn't answer right away. He looked around the small room, the jacket on the chair, the thermos on the counter, the photograph of Maggie's letter framed above the bed. You ever wonder, he said, if turning pain into art is just another way of running from it? Sam leaned forward on the screen. Or maybe it's how you walk with it instead. Jack sighed. You always did have the right words. Only because I listened to yours first. Then weeks passed. The producers sent contracts, emails, promises. Jack ignored them all. He kept driving the short routes through Helena, Missoula, and Kalispell, hauling lumber, hay, whatever the mountain towns needed. The money didn't matter. The rhythm did. One morning, as he was topping off Bluebird's oil, he saw a familiar figure walking up the gravel lot. Richard Doyle. Didn't expect to see you here, Jack said, wiping his hands. Richard smiled. You didn't think I'd let you have the last word, did you? Jack laughed quietly. You're braver than I am. Richard handed him an envelope. Local college asked me to give a talk about grief and rebuilding. They saw the film. They want you there too. Jack raised an eyebrow. A talk? Richard shrugged. Just folks sharing stories. They said your name draws people now. Jack looked at the letterhead. University of Montana. The event was called Roads Back Home, Stories of resilience. He folded the paper carefully. You gonna speak? I will if you do. Like a week later, Jack found himself standing in front of a small auditorium filled with faces. Students, truckers, widows, veterans. Sam was there too, camera in hand, capturing what he called the coda. Richard spoke first, calm, steady, the kind of voice that had learned how to live with silence. When he finished, he nodded toward Jack. This man's story brought me here. Jack took the podium slowly. The lights were too bright. He cleared his throat. I'm not much of a speaker, he said. Spent most of my life talking to engines. But engines don't judge, and neither should stories. He paused. We all drive something. Maybe not trucks, but something heavy. Something that wants to pull us backward. Some of us spend years trying to outrun what we can't. I did. Until a kid with a camera sat in my passenger seat and asked why. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. I told him I didn't know. But I do now. I drove because stopping meant remembering. And remembering hurt. But what I learned is... He glanced at Richard. You can't heal what you won't face. The road doesn't forgive. It just gives you another chance to try. He stepped back from the mic. The room was quiet for a long moment, then broke into applause that rolled like thunder through the hall. Sam caught it all on camera, but later he told Jack the best part wasn't the speech. It was what happened after. An older woman in the audience came up, tears on her face. My husband died in a crash 20 years ago, she said. I never forgave the driver. But tonight, I think I can. Jack didn't have words. He just nodded and took her hand. That evening, after everyone had gone, Jack sat on the hood of Bluebird under the parking lot lights. Sam joined him, 2 cups of coffee steaming between them. So what about the movie? Sam asked. Jack smiled. Let them make it, but make sure it ends right. How's that? With quiet, Jack said. Not fireworks, just quiet. Sam nodded. You really are done driving, aren't you? Jack looked out at the road beyond the campus, a ribbon of dark stretching into the mountains. I think I'll always drive, he said, just not to get away. When the film adaptation came out a year later, Jack watched it once, alone, late at night, with the volume low. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't supposed to be. But when the actor playing him looked into the camera and said, "Forgiveness isn't a destination. It's a mile marker you pass when you finally look in the rear view," Jack found himself smiling, because it sounded like something he might have said. By summer, Bluebird sat retired in a small field behind his house near the coast, wildflowers climbing up her wheels. Jack had built a porch, just like he promised. And most evenings, he sat there watching the sun slip down behind the water. Sometimes Sam called from some new project. Sometimes Richard stopped by with pie. Sometimes strangers sent letters that began with, "Your story made me remember mine." Jack always wrote back the same way. Keep driving. But don't forget to stop once in a while. That's where the living happens. Summer folded gently into autumn, and the light over the Pacific grew slower, amber, forgiving, endless. The waves rolled in and out with the patience of a heart that had learned to beat without hurry. Jack Lawson had made peace with stillness. Not the kind that chained him, but the kind that made him feel the earth breathing beneath his feet. Bluebird sat half buried in wildflowers at the edge of his yard, her chrome dulled, her mirrors turned toward the sea. On quiet mornings, Jack would sit on the porch steps with his coffee and swear he could still hear her idol. Low, steady, like a prayer that had outlived its need for words. Sometimes the neighbors' kids wandered over to look at her. "You really drove that across the whole country?" they'd ask, eyes wide. Jack would grin. "Across a few lives, too." They'd laugh, not understanding, and he liked it that way. The road was a story best told to those who hadn't yet lived enough to fear its truth. Sam visited every few months, still restless, still chasing stories. His hair had grown longer, his camera smaller, but his questions never stopped. That afternoon, they sat on the porch watching gulls skim the surface of the water. Sam was filming again. "Just a bit of B-roll," he said, though Jack knew better. "People keep asking for more," Sam said. "About you, about the aftermath. They want a third film." Jack chuckled. "Let him make it about someone else. I'm old news." "Not to them." "I'm not supposed to be," Jack said. "The story wasn't about me. It was about what happens when you stop running. That's not fame, kid. That's survival." Sam lowered the camera. "So, what do you want now?" Jack took a long sip of his coffee, letting the salt air fill his lungs. "Peace. But not the quiet kind. The kind that has room for noise, for life, for friends dropping by without warning and waves that sound like the hum of a good engine." Sam smiled. "You ever think of going back on the road, just for a run?" Jack nodded toward Bluebird. "I do sometimes. But she's earned her rest. And so have I." They sat in comfortable silence. The gulls wheeled. Somewhere a foghorn sounded, a long, low note that rolled through the mist like memory. Jack closed his eyes. For a heartbeat, he was back on the highway. Cleveland's skyline behind him, the long gray line ahead, the smell of diesel and snow and everything in between. He didn't miss it the way he used to. He carried it now. That was enough. Later that evening, he opened the mailbox by the road and found a small envelope without a return address. Inside was a photograph. Maggie and Claire, smiling from the front seat of a car, the road stretching out behind them. On the back, in neat handwriting, was a single line. "We're all home now. Thank you for getting there too." Jack stood for a long time, the sunset bleeding gold across his face. He felt something inside him ease, like a knot untying after years of tension. He tucked the photo into his shirt pocket and went back to the porch. When Sam asked what it was, Jack just said, "Proof." Of what? That forgiveness travels faster than any truck ever could. And the evening deepened. The sea turned the color of pewter, the first stars trembling above the horizon. Sam packed his gear, but before he left, he turned once more toward Jack. "You ever think about what you'd say to her, if you could?" he asked quietly. Jack smiled, not sad, not wistful, just full. "I'd tell her I finally learned how to stop, and that the world didn't end when I did." Sam nodded, understanding, and started down the path toward his car. "Good night, Jack. Good night, kid." When the sound of the tires faded, Jack looked back toward the ocean. The tide was rolling in, silver in the moonlight. Somewhere inside, the miles were still there. The frozen plains, the screaming storms, the diner lights. But they no longer chased him. They simply existed, part of a whole story that finally made sense. He leaned back in his chair, eyes half closed, whispering the names he'd carried for so long. Maggie, Claire, Richard, Sam, Bluebird. Each name a mile marker, each one a prayer. The wind rose softly, carrying the faint scent of rain and the far-off echo of engines. For the first time, he didn't flinch at the sound. He smiled. "Keep the wheels turning," he murmured to the night. "But don't forget to stop once in a while." And the world, vast and bright and merciful, seemed to answer with the hush of the waves. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps the road alive and inspires new journeys ahead.